Tech. Dr. Gallegos Butters is on today, and she's going to hit the record button and we'll jump into it. So welcome to the Curious About Internet of Things edition of our series. And with this series, we really like to dive in to things that we know a little bit about, but we're also really interested in. And the Internet of Things has been around for a very long time, and it is continually improving and expanding. And it's something that we were curious about, but also that we thought other people might be curious about and want to help us learn more, and also that we could help other people kind of expand their knowledge. So it's a twofold session. There's a lot of room for interactivity. And up here, I have my contact resources. My name is Carrie Lane. I am a project specialist with the EdTech team. And here with me today, as I mentioned, is Alicia, and she is the director of EdTech. She'll be in the chat, answering any questions and also sharing any links that we have. And on our third slide of the day, we have our educational technology calendar of events. If you click into this, this is a really good place for you to find our calendar of events and resources. So you'll go to View Events and Resources. And here you'll notice all of our trainings that have happened in the past. Those, when you see the links, will be links to our resources. So recorded information, our slides, anything else. And then on the ones that haven't happened yet, it is the sign up sheet. So you can sign up for any. This week, we have an accessible content creation one coming up. It was recently added due to popular demand for people asking how they would make their presentations and Google Docs and things like that more accessible for their students. And today, as we move forward with the training, we're going to learn about the Internet of Things in general, what it is, how it works, and then we'll look at how it applies to the field of education. And we'll dive into some content-based ideas based on your subject that you're teaching, and look at some lessons and projects that you can do with your students to expand their understanding and their knowledge of both the Internet of Things and the content you're teaching. All right, before we dive into Internet of Things basics, does anyone want to share anything that they already know about Internet of Things or anything they're already doing with Internet of Things? I'll just give a minute to pause for you to unmute or type into the chat. I know I asked some of you before, but if anyone wants to share about the Internet of Things. All right, well then I will dive into just a brief explanation and then we'll watch a quick video on what it is. So the Internet of Things is a network of connected devices, and those devices could be things like your refrigerator, it could be things like a tablet, it could be something within your car, it could be a smart watch, any of those devices that can collect information from you and then transmit that information through a network. And then that information can then be analyzed and action can occur based on that analysis, whether it's turning on lights or creating a notification at your house, something like that. And I see in the chat, smart house, smart glasses, and even a smart classroom. I need to hear more about this. So I don't know if you'd want to unmute, but that would be really cool to hear, especially about smart glasses and your smart classroom.
So I have the Meta glasses. They're Ray-Ban Metas. They're a recent purchase, but I have a lot of smart things in my classroom. We have Alexa that controls our bell schedule in my class because everybody has a different bell schedule. And then Smart House Alexa controls lights, door locks, just, smart TV stuff like that, security system.
Excellent. So lots of smart things. And how do the smart glasses work for anyone who doesn't know?
They're AI glasses, so they're also headphones, and they can record video and take pictures.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing.
Uh-huh.
So those are lots of examples that are the Internet of Things. Other ones that weren't mentioned there, we have smart cities. So if you think about all of the technology that helps to keep traffic signals working together, crossing signs, buildings that have alerts and notifications, any of that within a smart city is an example of the Internet of Things. As I mentioned, vehicles or fitness trackers. And then sometimes we don't think about it, but a lot of times our retail products have an RFID, which is something that's a unique identifier. And that is considered to be an Internet of Things device, as well as if you have, for example, at any of those stores where you have the digital labels that kind of change prices automatically, those are also Internet of Things. And if you're doing anything that's connected, so teleteaching or telehealth, all of that involves the Internet of Things as well. And I'm going to turn it over to our Qualcomm labs because they do a lot with the Internet of Things, and they even have an experience for students with the Internet of Things that I think is really interesting. So here we go.
Today we're going to be talking about IoT, or the Internet of Things. Now, you all know probably what the internet is. It's what we use to research and to watch videos and to go on websites. But what is the Internet of Things? Well, these are things that are connected to the internet. Now, you might think automatically of phones or tablets, computers. These are all things that connect to the internet. But moving forward, we're connecting all sorts of new things to the internet. You've probably heard a lot of people using the term smart. Smart things, smart homes, smart cities, smart watches. What does smart mean in terms of smart things? Well, these are all part of the Internet of Things. And the smart simply means that they are connected. Now, they might be connected via Bluetooth, so they're connected to your phone, and they can send data to your phone and receive that data so that everything can be connected and talk to each other. They might be connected via Wi-Fi, or via 4G, or coming up next, 5G. And so today you're going to get the opportunity to research the Internet of Things here at Qualcomm and what Qualcomm is working on in the area of Internet of Things, and also to design your own new invention involved with the Internet of Things. So you're going to get to create some new thing or take something that is old and make it even better by adding internet to it or enhancing what's already there.
So just to pause, what I like about this video is it explains the Internet of Things, but also you'll notice that this is the video that Qualcomm uses to work with students so that then they can explain the project that they're going to do. So you'll also hear some directions that obviously we won't be doing, but that are good to hear because it's a way that you can incorporate this kind of language and project-based learning with your students.
Qualcomm is currently focused on 4 categories of IoT: consumer electronics, smart cities, smart homes, and voice and music. Let's go a little bit deeper into each category. First up is consumer electronics. You are the consumer, and all the things that you use that have the internet in them are part of the Internet of Things. This includes things like drones, robots, cameras, and I think everybody's favorite, video games. Have you ever played a video game with someone in a different state, maybe even a different country? This is possible because of the internet, and it's part of our Internet of Things. Next up is smart cities. Smart cities includes things like cars, buses, trains, infrastructure, all these things that make our cities smarter. They help alleviate traffic and can hopefully make our commute a little easier. Our next category is smart homes. This includes things like smart appliances, maybe a refrigerator, a stove, the oven, or even your washer and dryer are connected to the internet. It could also include things like your lights. So you're able to walk into your house and say, Alexa, turn on the lights, and your lights turn on. That's part of the Internet of Things. Voice and music includes all the things that we use to listen to the music that we love. This might be Bluetooth speakers, it might be Bluetooth headphones, it might be just the things that we use to communicate to others. So everyone's favorite new example are the smart little pods that we have in our home. This might be Alexa or a Google Home, all those things where we can talk to those devices. They actually understand what we're saying, can answer our questions or do what we ask and respond to us. And all those things are connected to the internet. They are part of our Internet of Things. So, as you probably know by now, Qualcomm is a company of inventors. We are constantly inventing new things, specifically in the area of IoT and 5G. Today, you're going to become an inventor. So, we've got 4 categories of IoT, and likely one of those stood out to you. Maybe it was 1, 2, or even 3 that you're really interested in. We want you to work with a team and start to think about one of those areas of IoT and a new invention that you can create to add to our Internet of Things. Take a look at some examples of projects that students have created in our lab that relate to the Internet of Things. Now keep in mind, none of these projects are actually connected to the internet, but they are great representations of these students' ideas. We hope you enjoyed learning about Qualcomm and the Internet of Things, and that you were inspired by your new creation and your new thing that's connected to the internet. Remember that every new invention starts with just a little idea.
Does anyone want to share any thoughts on the video? I think that that's a really interesting way that they incorporate the project base to the Internet of Things by having them create something to add on to the Internet of Things repository of things that already exist. Does anyone else have anything to share?
Just wanted to share that I guess I know more about this topic than I originally thought. 'Cause
Yeah,
we saw this.
exactly. Exactly. A lot of times when people first hear about the Internet of Things, they think that it's a completely obscure topic that, they've learned nothing about. But when you think about the actual tangible examples and really what it is, we know all about it. And that brings me to the question of if anyone who wasn't at the original or who wasn't at the beginning of our session didn't answer, what are some examples of Internet of Things technologies that you have now that you know what it is? And how frequently do you use them? Oh, and we have someone who's been to this lab. So I'll just put myself on mute for a second, and if anyone wants to jump in and tell us about some of the Internet of Things technologies that you have, or if you want to put it in the chat, that's fine as well.
Hi, can you guys hear me? Okay, so I'm not sure how much people shared or whatnot, but I mean a couple of things that I have is like a smartwatch, like the Apple phone and things like that. I wish I had one of those refrigerators where I could see inside of it on my phone in case I forgot to get something from the store. But this are a couple of the basic things that come to mind in terms for the for the Internet of Things for me.
Thank you for sharing. And I also see we use something related to this every day within our cell phone, our health records, Alexa, ChatGPT, smartwatch, phone, glasses, daily. Yeah, so a lot of this technology we are using every day, and there are some that would be really cool to have, like the refrigerators. An app called Wave that takes notes of all the meetings and then summarizes them. That's awesome. I'm That's actually also really good because sometimes when you have meetings and you are using a platform that is for your organization, those get blocked. So having an app on your phone would be useful for that, for sure. Great. Well, thank you for sharing, everyone. And a smartwatch, smart ring, and Alexa. Very nice. Keep the answers coming. I'm just going to move into just some of the components. So the video really explained very well what the Internet of Things is, and they gave you an example of how students can start to think about the Internet of Things and create projects for it. A little bit to understand with the Internet of Things is that there are different stages of how it works. And so at some point, at the beginning point of your Internet of Things device, you're going to need something that has a sensor or something that can collect data. And so all of the things that we've mentioned before, for example, if we wanted one of those refrigerators, the refrigerator would be collecting data or information about what is in our fridge. And after that, we would need that data that is collected by whatever our smart object is to be sent via Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, satellite, any kind of network to the cloud, where it can be received by a software that processes the data. And that software may be autonomous, meaning that if there's something set up, it might already take action without you having to do anything at all. So sometimes when we have certain smart products, they'll just do something for us based on a certain criteria that's automatic. Other things will go to the opportunity to allow us to make a decision based on what we see. And so that would be something where we control whether we want to set an alert or we want to activate a setting of something. And so those are the four parts: the sensors, the connectivity, the processing platforms, and then the user ability to take action on whatever we're getting from the system. So that is the basic component set for the Internet of Things. And with that being said, you've all shared quite a few different Internet of Things objects that you use now that you are more familiar with what the Internet of Things is. With those, are there any where you're taking regular action? So for example, Alicia shared with me earlier today, and she can jump in if she'd like, but it saves her a lot of time to actually use the Internet of Things with her car. So she doesn't need to take her keys out when she is running or walking. Instead, she just has her phone and her phone can activate her car. Alicia, was there any other example that you wanted to share?
Yeah, so my car also knows the time of day I go places. So if I'm getting into my car at approximately 5:15 a.m., it knows I'm going to Pilates. And so it will give me all the information, the traffic, everything I need to know. I never programmed it. It just was able to tell from my actions of doing that every day. So my car is probably the smartest thing I own. It knows exactly what I need. It has a temperature. So when I get in, it knows my fingerprints. And so my car is set to my temperature and everything. So I have a smart car. And it's not, and it's just a regular Subaru. So it's not like a big fancy car or anything. It's like just a Subaru.
Does anyone else regularly control some form of Internet of Thing object? So you constantly take action to a point where now it knows your systems or the way that you do things? Car defrosting and controlling a temperature, traffic, and calendar. Yeah. Perfect. So now that we've talked a little bit about our Internet of Things objects in our general life, including a watch that knows when you're running, so that's really cool, we're going to move into education. And so I know that Shayna shared that she had a smart classroom, and some of those things were Alexa. I don't know if also you have things like smart projectors or anything like that, but does anyone have anything now that we know a little bit about it in their classroom that they think qualifies as smart? Apple TV? What else in your classroom might be smart? Promethean board, absolutely. Robots, iPads, 3D printer, laser cutter. Yeah, all of these things that connect to our networks. Some of us even might have things like textbooks or projectors that are smart, and we'll talk a little bit about that after. And so in education, when you're thinking about smart classrooms, you just are thinking about multiple tools and gadgets that are working together to support your teaching and to support the students' learning. And with this, there are a lot of benefits. And we'll talk later about some of the downsides and the considerations when you are using the Internet of Things. But some of the big benefits are increasing student engagement. So, for example, if you've ever played Kahoot with your students and or any of the gamification, the Blookit or quizzes, Kahoot, if you think about that, that's multiple devices that are all participating in that same game. And the way that it's doing it is they're all collecting data from a specific device and transmitting it to the same place where an action is taken. And so gamification is a huge thing in the Internet of Things, and it enhances engagement. Additionally, anytime that you can have kids on multiple devices collaborating simultaneously, perhaps when they're working remotely on a project, that is a good way to expand engagement and also is utilizing the Internet of Things. If any of you in your student or in your classroom have students who need specific assistive technologies or translation tools, anytime you connect an assistive technology, for example, I was working with a student who had a Braille typer, and that Braille typer connects to a computer, which then allows the student, or to your phone, which allows the student to type things in, and then it shows up in Braille and it reads aloud. And so all of those are examples of Internet of Things connecting adaptive or assistive technology to other technologies elsewhere. And then there are things that are more of the logistics of running a building or running a classroom, things like inventory control, or thinking about a classroom that automatically turns off the lights when the students and the teachers aren't there anymore to save energy and electricity. The other thing that sometimes you have is an automatic system that will track when people leave or people come. And that can be really helpful for safety and security as well, so that you know if you have visitors and guests in the building. Data optimization is another benefit of the Internet of Things because it takes data from student devices or student computers, anything like that, and it can track it in real time, and then it can allow you to quickly provide feedback or get information and collaborate with your students simultaneously. It can also allow you to adjust the learning paths for different students. So you can personalize based on the information that you've gathered from your students' devices and your student input. And as I mentioned before, it can be really useful for remote learning. So all of those things that are just kind of common to us as we've gotten used to using technology in our teaching to help personalize and help with data and assessment, all of these things are made possible by the Internet of Things. And I see a lot in the chat, so I'm gonna pause for a second. Yes, C pens. So that's a really good one and one that people may not know about. These are things that read to students, dictionary and translator. And I don't know if you'd like to share a little bit more about that because that's a perfect example of an assistive and also just a useful tech that is part of the Internet of Things.
Yes, no problem. Excuse me. I'm a special education teacher, so many of my students are not able to fluently read, but they have good understanding of information if you read it to them. So in particular for like fifth and sixth graders, it's a wonderful tool. Also my bilingual students that might have just come to the United States and they're still very strong in Spanish. Um, this particular tool can translate, I believe it's like 9 different languages. It's able to give them a dictionary in either language if they need it, and it reads out loud for them. In addition to that, it also does recording, like if you were mentioning earlier that you can take notes and all that, this pen can do that for you as well. So it's been quite a lifesaver for my students that are in the upper grade and still struggling to read.
Perfect. Thank you for that assistive tech accessibility example. That one's great. And then I see also Apple's Classroom app for educational iPads can control students' online activity and accessible apps. You can even program lesson plans that change student websites, apps at given times. Yeah, so a lot of the features that you use to adjust content on the fly, but also to control what the students are doing, those are part of the Internet of Things. Go Guardian, student watchdog that tracks in real time. I can't teach without it anymore. Yeah. Another example of this would be if you have VR headsets and you happen to want to see what the students are seeing as you give them an immersive experience, that would be another example. Any of these where you can look in and see and control what students are doing, that's part of the IoT in education. Thank you for such great examples. And so I put on here just some examples. Some of them we've talked about, like the Promethean or interactive whiteboard. There are some other ones that are interesting that are kind of examples that I thought might be useful to think about. How would you do real-time progress tracking with IoT to get real-time feedback and adjust learning paths? Things like smart textbooks to tailor content and information. Coding platforms, one of those is the Loco Robo. And then there are some other ones that allow you to code your own IoT devices in the classroom. 3D simulations, anytime you have a simulation or an immersive experience, that's something that is part of IoT. And then things like automatic trackers. So when the school is tracking attendance or if there's a library checkout system, that's an IoT, as well as anytime you have a projector or a document camera that allows you to connect to lessons from all over or to make interactive, engaging content rather than just passively transmitting it to students, those are IoT. So what we're going to do, I'm going to leave that slide up, and there's a Padlet on here that I'll copy the link for and put in the chat. What I would like for you to do is research one of those that you think is interesting, and the directions are on the Padlet too, just in case you forget what they are. And so once you've chosen which one you want to research, take 2 minutes and I'll set a timer. Research, just a simple Google search, what the IoT object or concept is, how it impacts education, and then would you be excited to try it out in your classroom? So the Padlet link I will grab for you, and then any one that you want, it's okay if multiple people choose the same one, and we'll populate that Padlet. Any questions about that? No? Okay, so I'm going to leave this slide up and I'm going to set a timer for 2 minutes for your research and then we'll have another, we'll say 5 minutes, but I might cut it short if it seems like everyone's done early for just populating the Padlet with information. And I'll turn off my camera and my microphone so you all feel comfortable just taking some work time. All right, our fun disco timer just went off. And so at this point, if you want to move to the Padlet and start populating the Padlet, I see a few of you have already. And so we'll just take about 5 minutes, but if I see that lots of people are done early, then I might cut it a little short to share what you learned about your different IoT object. And we'll take just one more minute if anyone wants to finish up typing. All right. Thank you everyone for sharing, and feel free if you didn't have a chance to finish to add things in as we go through. Does anyone want to share out something that they thought was interesting that they learned about during their little research session?
I'll share. When I went in to take a look at this real-time progress tracking, the information that popped up first was tracking things such as airplane data, more of the industrial kind of thing instead of related to academics. So I made a connection between that and my IXL program, which does real life tracking for my students. And that one allows you to intervene right away instead of waiting to take a look at grades later and say, oh, they really didn't get this. You can just go right there and then to your student or online and provide help at that point.
Thank you for sharing. And I really like that you pointed out that a lot of the times when you look at the IoT or Internet of Things, it seems like it's meant for other industries besides education. We don't necessarily think of it as a really nice puzzle that fits together. But I think that when we start to think about what we do and our teaching practices and how we monitor things and change immediately using technology, we will see that there are a lot of ways that we're already using it and ways that we can continue to grow in that field, especially as AI continues. There's a real correlation and kind of interconnectivity between AI and what that does, and then all of the Internet of Things possibilities. Anyone else want to share out? I see a hand up. I don't know. Would you like to share, Ms. Mariquin?
Yes, I was looking at the smart boards and I was looking at the price of the smart boards. That's the first thing that came across. But I haven't used that I'm doing a virtual class and I was wondering if there were any smart boards for Zoom. Okay. I'm not exactly sure the capabilities of a smart board in the classroom yet, but it was interesting.
Yeah. So I do know that there are a lot of virtual whiteboard programs out there that some of them are free. I know that Zoom had one, and Microsoft Teams has their own. And I'm not sure. I think Google, you have to kind of outsource to something else. We don't use Google Meet very often, but a lot of those have the interactive whiteboards, which work similarly to a Promethean board or an interactive whiteboard in the classroom where students can annotate and they can type in text and things like that. And then their information can be saved to your computer. So those are useful things. And then, of course, they don't have quite the compilation of like interesting lessons or engaging simulations by themselves, but because you're on the computer, you can then connect back out to a lot of those things as well. And if anyone has any recommendations that they want to share in the chat, that would also be good. But definitely you can find internet. Yep, Pear Deck's a great one too. Nearpod. You can definitely find programs like those, Pear Deck, Nearpod, and then interactive whiteboards within platforms or ones that you can get free or freemium that you can use on virtual teaching that have similar kind of correlations. And so we have now delved into just the general use of the IoT in education. And I wanted to share now some lesson and project ideas. And I divided it into math, history, social science, science, ELA, and then other topics. And so with that being said, I am not going to read off all of the different lesson ideas, but I do have some on each slide that relate to a certain topic. I also put into your slides lesson examples, so kind of cool projects or lessons that you could do about the Internet of Things that would explore the standards, tie directly to them, and also utilize concepts related to the IoT. So we'll go over a couple of those. And I also just paused to look in the chat. I see Polypad as an interactive online whiteboard. Thank you for sharing, Tanya. And as we move through these, I will also ask that if you have any ideas for math or science or language arts, history topics that you can think of that would make cool lessons, share them out too. This is really a collaborative session of just gaining ideas and sharing with each other. So I put in here for the Internet of Things for math, this lesson example about students creating a smart fitness tracker. So as we mentioned before, students can, or anyone can have wearable technology that tracks a lot of their information, including their heart rate. It can track the calorie intakes, the steps taken, anything that you would normally track with your phone with a health app, something like that. So as a cool math project, you could have students create their own mock fitness tracker. You could, if you were really into it, use something like a Raspberry Pi or an Arduino to then get that to work more electronically. But even if you didn't do that, they could go in and they could create just a cardboard cutout of a fitness tracker. And then you could provide them with different data sets of different health information that you've maybe compiled based on different people and different ages, and they can use the data that they get to talk about trends and statistics and probability, and also to look at making suggestions for what people of certain ages and health should do. So that's just one example, and the full lesson, I'll just show you how I set it up. The full lesson is here with the Common Core standards. I didn't know what everyone teaches, but just tried to put in some things that I thought were creative uses of math and IoT. And so as I'm moving into science, if anyone else has any ideas for math topics, as I mentioned, I won't read all of these here, but some fun ones with traffic and greenhouses and water monitoring. And then for science, a lot of the science topics involved things related to weather and natural disasters, energy management. But one that I thought would be really fun is tracking wildlife and the migration, how they move with some form of IoT. And so, of course, you could have a functional IoT or you could make a mock one. So you could use GPS data that already exists, or you could have students create some kind of mock project where they're tracking that data. And then they can look at spreadsheets and start to track how animals move, why they move that way. And in doing so, they can learn about GPS, they can learn about ecosystems, they can learn about how animals move and migrate. So it can be really, really good way to have students go through the NGSS standards and also talk about tracking through the Internet of Things. And I see a good one in the chat. Lie detectors, and we have made an operation game out of cardboard boxes and sensors. That's really cool. Would you share a little bit about the lie detectors?
So we used Arduinos and some foil and wire, and we used the data manager that's within it's like it looks like a chart. It would look like a lie detector, but it would use the moisture in the person's fingers to detect whether or not you're lying, because your moisture in your fingers slightly increases when you are not telling the truth.
That is really interesting. Very cool. So those are some really great ideas. And she mentioned Arduinos. I have links at the end for certain kits that you can use, Arduinos or Raspberry Pi kits, that you can start to do if you actually want to have working sensors and projects like that that are really meaningful. Yeah, and microbits too. Thank you. Yeah, so those are some pretty awesome ones. For ELA, I put up here things like IoT inspired creative writing prompts, which sometimes might go into discussing sci-fi and some of those dystopian things as well. And then I was a sixth, seventh, and eighth grade English teacher, and we did a lot of how-to guides. So if you're having students do technical writing, this would be a great opportunity to have your students utilizing some form of technology and then creating a how-to user manual to practice their technical writing. So the lesson for that one is in here as well. And if anyone has any science or English related ideas, feel free to put them in the chat. For me, English related ones are really interesting because they involve writing and research, but they are a little harder to come up with, I think, for most people because it doesn't directly relate quite as much as something like technology or math or science. And then for history, you can look at multiple things. So you can look at how things like technology are kind of using and preserving historical artifacts. You can look at how technology has changed over time. And so one of those would be looking at smart cities throughout history. So looking at how technology has made infrastructure in cities throughout time, and then how technology now, as it's improving, can do the same thing and maybe go back to an ancient city like Rome and look at how if we had the Internet of Things and the technology we have now, how would we fix things like their waste management or their sewage or some of the issues that were originally in a city that existed in the ancient times. So a lesson there. And I see for English using character AI to speak book characters. Yeah, so that's a good idea. And a lot of the times you can use like even I don't know if it's the same title, but there are ones where you can have AI that's talking to the students from a perspective. I know that GPT does that, where they can take the perspective of historical figures or figures from books and talk directly with students so that they have an opportunity to see history. Of course, there's always some elements of bias in that. So it's really good to teach your kids to be media literate and to fact check. And then in different subjects, things like physical education, I really like this one, the idea of an obstacle course where you have tracking of how students are performing at different obstacles. It could be real tracking with real sensors or even just talking about making fake sensors and then collecting data. So not all of these things always need to be real. Creating some kind of interactive art installation where sensors can collect information and change things like the lighting or the way that the art displays. For foreign languages, having real-time communication between people and students from different countries so that people can talk to each other. And in tech, the whole thing is tech-based. So really anything that you're doing, if you want to maybe talk about just how to build an IoT device and using some of those kits and sensors. And so on here, I put a couple of links. So this one, there are three, I believe, that link directly to curriculum for the Internet of Things. So a few different lessons that you can do based on the Internet of Things. This one is on GitHub. So if you scroll down, it has a beginner's curriculum to the Internet of Things. And then this one has some lesson plans as well. And here we have a couple of different kits and courses that you can use if you want to integrate the technology into the Internet of Things. All right, let me pause and see if anyone has any other ideas to share or any questions. Okay, well, to conclude, the Internet of Things has lots of possibilities. As I've mentioned, it has great benefits for the classroom and a lot of things that will probably continue to progress with AI and all the technological changes that are happening. Just some things to keep in mind, whether you're a teacher or in administration, that the Internet of Things is connecting everything, which does potentially serve as a privacy issue. So making sure that we are keeping students' information safe and secure, and also understanding that sometimes when we're connecting devices, it becomes a little less safe privacy and security wise. As a school, it can be pricey to not only purchase the first round of whatever connected devices you want, but also to continue to support PDs and continue to support maintenance on those technologies. You need a certain amount of network and infrastructure to be able to house IoT devices or to use IoT devices. So that's something to consider. And then, of course, just how reliable are the things that we're using? And is there a way that we're checking for that reliability? And as we scale up, are we picking the best products for us and for our situation? And when we think about implementing technology, there's always the issue of the digital divide. Are we creating a more robust digital divide by increasing our devices in the classroom, or are we helping to correct it by our implementation process? So, some things to consider. With that being said, does anyone want to share any takeaways or questions they have, or even what do you see for the future of your classroom with the Internet of Things?
There again, um, when we work with students with special needs, this area is very, very important to them being able to survive in the general education classroom, especially in a time where there's a big push for all students to be in the general education classroom. This allows them to survive. So things like both voice to text technology, text to speech, the CPIN that I talked about, all those things do wonders, not to mention uh, other type of technologies like the ones that students that cannot speak are able to use this technology to communicate with teachers and family. So I think more and more we're going to rely on this kind of technology. It is up to us, I think, teachers to use it in a way that it improves the student experience rather than take away from it, so that it's not being used as a crutch, but as something to enhance their education.
Absolutely, using it as an enhancement and being at the forefront of making decisions that benefit the students for special education. And I see in the chat also for emerging bilinguals and thinking about technology to support parents and students who need translation. Um, and we have in the chat as well more AI and chatbot usage. So tailoring experiences for individual students. And also, I would think as kind of coaches, tutors, and mentors moving forward as well. And if Shayna or Tanya want to jump in and speak, feel free to unmute as well. And with that, that concludes our Curious About. We have a couple more minutes again if anyone wants to jump in. And I'm leaving up on the screen the last slide of the professional development slides is our professional development feedback. So if you have any feedback for us, as I mentioned at the beginning, the Curious About series is really just things that we are curious about and we wonder if other people are as well. So it's a little bit of a different format than some of our others, but we are really excited that we got to share so much information with all of you because you brought such great ideas and concepts and things to share with us.